Hey, hi everyone, welcome back to Automation eLearn. In this video, I'm going to discuss four useful options, four useful ways to make your git add command very useful in your day-to-day life. If you look at the git architecture, here we have a working area and we have to add all our files to staging area using git add command before we perform commit operation, right? So initially our files are a part of working area and we execute git add, and then those files were added to staging index, and then further we perform commit operation to local repository. So this is the workflow. So today I will discuss four important and very useful ways to add your changes from working area to staging index. So we will understand the different ways of using git add with different flags. These are the four options that we are going to understand in this video. First, we will see how to add a file using file name, which is the very common way to add your files to staging index. Second option is to add both tracked and untracked file, and the third one is to add only tracked file. And we have fourth option where we do not add a complete file but a hunks from the file. So we will basically understand how to add a specific changes from a single file and add it to the staging index. So these are the four different ways which we are going to understand in this video. So guys, first way to add a files to the staging index is using the name of the file. Here I am under test1 project, and checking at the status, here we can see we have a couple of files m2 and m3 which are completely untracked. Git is not aware about these two files, and m1.txt is already being tracked by Git. At the same time, if you refer the Git architecture, then m1.txt is already part of staging index and m2 and m3 are still in working area. And those files m2 and m3 we have to move to staging index. So here I need to execute git add command with the file name. Let's say I want to add m2.txt. I want to move m2.txt from working area to staging index. Here we can give one file at a time, or we can provide multiple files in a single command separated by space. For example, you want to add m2 and m3 both, then you can mention both the file name here along with git add command. So m2.txt space and m3.txt, and let's execute this. And now if we check status, all the files are part of staging area in git workflow. As we can see, all these files are showing in green and under changes to be committed. It means all these files are part of staging index and ready to commit to the local repository. This is very simple and straightforward way to add changes to the staging area, and this is very common one. This is what most of us do while working on day-to-day work. Because this is very simple command, we just have to execute git add along with name of the file which I want to add. The second useful option is to add the files using dot. Here we don't need to mention file name, rather we can ask git to add all the files which are yet to be added to staging index. Here let's check the status of the project at this point of time, and here we can see m1.txt is part of staging index as well, and m1.txt is present in working area also, along with m2 and m3 which are untracked files. Git is not aware about m2 and m3, whereas m1 is already being tracked by Git, and there are few changes related to m1 which are yet to be added to staging index. And this is the status of test2 project over here. In the first option, we mentioned each file name, right? Like git add and m2.txt. So this is what we did in the first option. And here, if you have multiple files, then you need to give name of each and every files over here, right? Git add and one by one, separated by space, we have to mention each file name. But using dot, what we can do is we can ask Git to stage all the files which are in the working area. For example, if I'll execute git add dot, here dot means whatever files are part of working area, move all those to the staging index. It can be tracked file and it can be non-tracked file. For example, here M1 is already being tracked by Git. So this will be included, and M2 and M3 are not yet tracked. Git is not aware about these two files. So these two files will also be added if we execute git add dot. And once I execute this command and check status, we can see all these files are now part of staging index. So m1.txt was anyways part of staging index. So its changes are also now part of staging index along with m2 and m3.txt, which were completely untracked. But now m2 and m3 are also being tracked. With this option, we don't need to mention the file name, but at the same time, we need to be careful while executing this option, because it will also stage the files which you don't want Git to track. For example, if you are working with Maven project, then you don't need to track the target folder, right? Because that is the folder which generate automatically, and it has different logs and the reports. So we don't need to track target folder. So we need to execute this command carefully, because in that case, if we will execute git add and dot, then all the unnecessary files will also be moved to staging area in Git. So we need to be careful while executing git add dot. Even though if you add something to the staging area by mistake, like I gave example of Maven project, so there are many folders and files which are automatically generated, like target is one of the classic example. So even though if you add the target folder or any other files and folder to staging index by mistake, then we don't need to worry. We can easily move those files again from staging area back to the working area. And this is called undo operation. And there are many different undo operations, and I have explained all these undo operations in my Git playlist, so you can refer these videos to learn about all the undo operations. Those are very useful in day-to-day work with Git. So that was all about the second option, to add files to the staging area in Git. Let's understand the third option, which is actually the enhanced version of the second option that we understood. So for this, I'm referring test3 project, and here the project status is like similar to what we had initially in the test2. So we have m1, which is already being tracked by Git, and there are a couple of modifications related to m1.txt, and these two files are completely new, and Git is not aware about these two files. So in the second option, we understood if we execute git add dot, then Git will move all the files, whether those are tracked files or those are not tracked, from working area to staging index. So git add will consider tracked file also and untracked files also. But here in the third option, we can use one additional flag along with git add dot to ask Git to move the files from working area to staging index which are already being tracked by Git. So let's understand this carefully. So here I have to use additional flag, that is -u. So the command would be git add -u dot. So here I am asking Git, so I have mentioned dot, it means everything, but at the same time I am using a flag -u. It means I am asking Git to add everything which are already being tracked by Git. So in this situation, m1.txt is already being tracked by Git, and m2 and m3 are new files. So when I execute this command git add with -u flag, in this case Git will only move m1.txt and it will not do anything to m2 and m3 file. So that is the difference. In the previous option, we executed git add dot, which were considering all the files, tracked and untracked file both. But here with additional flag, Git will only process tracked file. Git is not bothering about M2 and M3 here. So let's execute this and check status here. So here we can see m1.txt, which was already being tracked by Git, which was already part of staging index, and it also had a couple of changes. So Git has considered m1.txt only. M2 and M3 are still a part of untracked section over here. So here Git will easily identify the files which are already being tracked and move only those files to the staging area here, and the files which are new to Git like M2 and M3 are not yet tracked. Git will not do anything to those files. Here with the third option, we have advantage over the first and second option that we understood. If you are mostly working with the files which are already being tracked by Git and you don't have any new files to stage, then this option would be very useful. In the fourth option, we can ask Git to stage part of a file. It means you can ask Git that I made changes at 10 different places in a single file, but I want to add 5 changes only. I don't want to add the complete file. For example, this is the file, and suppose you made some changes over here and you made some changes over here also. So these two changes are part of m1.txt only, right? But with this fourth option that we will understand, you can ask Git to add this change only and ignore this particular change. It will be there in your file, but you can instruct Git to add only this one, and this one you don't want to stage now, maybe you can stage it later. So this is very interesting and useful way where Git will break your changes into small chunks called hunks, and Git will ask you which hunk to add and which hunk to ignore for now. So this will be one hunk and this will be another hunk. So you can instruct Git to add this hunk and ignore this hunk. And this is very easy approach by which you can instruct Git which changes to add and which changes to ignore from the file. So guys, I have already discussed and explained this concept with the practical example in detail in this video. Let's not discuss this again here. I would suggest to watch this video from the Git playlist to understand it in detail. So guys, these were the 4 different ways to add the changes to the Git staging area. To summarize all these 4 options, I have made a table here with the command and what it is used for. So first option was git add file name. So it will add the file from the working area to staging index. Let it be tracked file or untracked file, it doesn't matter. Whatever file name you will mention, it will move to staging index. Another option that we saw is git add dot. It is used to add all the tracked and untracked file both to the staging index. No need to mention file name. So here we don't need to give file name. Using dot, it will add all the files, whether it is tracked or untracked, all the files to the staging index. And git add -u dot, which is basically the enhanced version of second option. In the second option, it was processing tracked and untracked both. But with the third option, Git will only process the tracked files only, which are already being tracked by Git. And here also we don't need to mention the file name. The fourth option that we actually did not discuss here, but I have already covered that in my previous video, where we can use git add -p and a file name. So this is used to add hunks from the tracked file. So this command is also applicable for the tracked files only, where Git will create a few hunks based on the changes that you did into your file, and Git will ask you which hunk to add and which to ignore for now. Here we do not add a complete file at a time. Here we are talking about a small chunk from the single file that we can ask Git to add. So this fourth option is different than first three options. In first three, we were processing the file itself, but in the fourth option, we are talking about the part of the file. We are not talking about the complete file as in. Alright guys, so these were the four different ways to add the changes to the Git staging area. I personally use all these four options in a different situations as applicable. Give it a try to use this option and share your experience. Let me know in case of any questions or doubts. If you like the topics and the concepts I am sharing on this channel, please subscribe to the channel and share it with your friends. Thank you for running this one. Thank you.